Hello, welcome all. Sorry for the delay that we had. Well, welcome to our meeting and our event. I'm sorry, our event today. So this event is brought to you by PPI UK with collaboration with PPI Greater Leeds. And here we have our speakers from YIPA. So we're going to talk about all of the things that you need to know about the process of applying for the work, the jobs here, and also the working visa that has new regulations, and also the CV, how you make a good CV, the cover letter, everything is going to be covered from our friends from YIPA. So we have Christian Alfar here, but before we talk about them a little bit more, we're going to have a opening session from Mas Dani from Pepe UK. So, Mas Dani, if you would like to take the virtual floor, please.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Ladies and gentlemen, our distinguished participants, I'm Danny Malau. I'm PhD research student, and in my capacity of the head of academic student support Indonesian Students Union (PPI UK), I welcome you all who are participating in today's interactive webinar. My heartfelt welcome. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam damai sejahtera, Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. I especially thank you all joint partner for today's event, PPI List and also YIPA for your support on collaborations to make this event true. We are here truly as one nation, so we do our best when we do it together. So this is a good first step in the right directions to force synergy between all of us to make Indonesians great in the UK through all the students. Yes, we all experience unprecedented situations during this COVID-19, a virus which is not visible to naked eye, has put all the world on the pause. It has put all of us also, especially Indonesian students in the UK, into the questions how and where we go from here regarding to our career prospect in the UK during and after COVID-19 pandemic. Additionally, also, we are also into questions about how's the job market in the UK for all Indonesian students, especially when the post-study work visa, which will be officially launched in next year. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, we have all these kind of challenges, but also we have also one hopeful signs. We are caring and we are sharing each other as one nation, as Indonesians. So we are here today for all of you to serve you because we care all of you. Yipa, through today's speaker, will try to help all of us to have a better frame to step on the right directions actually about preparing our future career in the middle of both situations that I mentioned before. I know that today's topic maybe bring up a number of questions to you all, and I want to let you know that our today's speaker, our expert, will address as many as they can in the time that we have today. So feel free to deliver your questions through the available chat tab during the sessions. And without further ado, I will let our today moderator also, Sarah, to lead the show. And to the rest all of you, I say enjoy the sessions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Mas Dani, for the opening remarks. We will hear another opening remark from our collaborators as well. So we have here Janet, the president of PPI Greater Leeds. Janet, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mas Dani and Sarah. Hello, everyone. I would like to give a warm welcome to our speakers, Christy Zacharias and Alfar Laksana, Mas Dani Malau and his academic support team from Pepe UK, the academic division of Pepe Greater Leeds, and to all the guests attending today's interactive webinar. My name is Janet Alma Witanto. I'm the president of Pepe Greater Leeds, and it is my honor to welcome you to today's event Job Hunting in the UK, Do's, Don'ts, and the Graduate Worker Visa, which is this year's first ever collaboration between Pepe UK and Pepe Greater Leeds. Although COVID-19 has managed to stop us from being in close proximity to each other, it cannot stop us from inspiring each other through knowledge exchange. Through this webinar, Pepe UK and Pepe Greater Leeds have joined forces to equip you in your journey of seeking work opportunities in the UK. Based on my personal experience, I can say for myself that job hunting is not as easy as we want it to be. Whether it is an internship, a placement, or a graduate role that you are pursuing, you need all the help and preparation you can get. And that is exactly why this webinar is made. The UK government have announced their plan of opening a new immigration route, which will allow international students to work for 2 years after completing their program of study. Today, we have the opportunity to address questions regarding the upcoming 2-year graduate worker visa and to hear tips on the do's and don'ts on job applications in the UK, shared by our experienced speakers from Young Indonesian Professionals Association in the UK, an organization that has been working towards the career agendas of Indonesian students from across the UK. Before I hand over the screen back to Sarah, our moderator of today's talk, I would like to thank each and every one of you again for attending this event. It is wonderful to virtually see you take charge of your career with Pepe UK, Pepe Greater Leeds, and YIPA UK. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet. I couldn't have said it better myself. We are here with one of two of our friends from the Young Indonesian Professionals Association, or also known as YIPA. So I'm going to introduce you all to our beloved speakers for today. So first up, we have Christy Zacharias. She graduated from UCL Neuroscience and is now an Investor Relations AVP for Barclays. And could you wave to the audience, Christy? Okay, so apart from her work, she serves as the executive director of Young Indonesians Professionals Association in UK, or YIPA UK, and she's also the head of EMEA and Public Relations of Global Indonesia Professionals Associations, or JIPA. So that is Christy, you guys. And now we have Alvar Laksana. Alvar Laksana works at JP Morgan Case as a technology analyst or software engineer. So he also graduated from the UK, exactly from Imperial College London in 2019 with the master degree in engineering in electronic and information engineering. So outside of work, he's also the mentorship director at YIPA UK. So YIPA has also a mentorship program that hopefully we could gain more knowledge about how to be successful in our job hunting here. So Alvar, could you wave to our audience, please? Okay, without further ado, Christy and Alvar, would you please like to unmute yourself and say hi to our attendees?
Hello, hi, nice to see you all.
I think we want to highlight Christy. She's the one who's going to be doing all the introductions about YIPA today.
Okay, so Christy, would you like to introduce us to YIPA first before we dive in deeper to our main topic of the day?
Of course, yes, happy to. So YIPA UK is Young Indonesian Professionals Association in the UK, and essentially, I think the easiest way to think about it is basically like PPI, tapi for working professionals. Jadi once you've graduated university, once you've started working, you might be thinking like, is there an Indonesian society for people, Indonesians who are working in the UK? So that's YIPA UK, that's the answer for you. So it's really a natural progression, and that's why we're really happy to collaborate with PPIs, because essentially this is PPI-nya orang kerja gitu. gitu. In terms of what we do 4 types of events. One, we do socials, which is more kind of like get to know, making connections, networking, and building friendships over a meal. And then secondly, we also do what we call Meet the Leader series. And this is basically a series where we invite industry leaders to share their perspectives on current affairs, depending on their kind of areas of expertise and at the same time their career journeys. So these are usually C-suite executives and ministers, and they share a little bit around how they managed to reach the position that they're in now. Thirdly, we also do what we call knowledge shares, and this is more towards member-to-member sharing. And it's when we have some of the more senior members share perhaps stories like newer professionals around topics that are more day-to-day. So things like how do you, how long do you need to work to get a like PR? How do you make career moves? How do you negotiate salary? So more practical things for the workplace. And then fourthly, we do Indonesia Career Evening. And this is our offering for students. It's an annual conference by students for students, meaning that it's organized by an independent committee under YIPA, made up of students currently in university. And it's basically a career conference where we connect you with employers who are looking for Indonesian talents. And these employers are both in the UK and in Indonesia as well. So it's just kind of like our offering for students so they can kind of like explore what's out there, what might be good for them, talk to recruiters. So in a nutshell, that's what YIPA does. If you want any further information, if you want to interact with us, I conveniently have a banner and you can check out our socials. But yeah, that's my brief introduction on YIPA.
Wow. Okay. So that was the brief introduction. So you know that there is more to what Christy has just said, and really excited for this one, guys. So let's just jump into. I've got some questions that I would like to ask to both of you. So both of you went to university in the UK. So Christy went to UCL, Alfar went to Imperial College and Imperial College London. And then how did you go about finding these job opportunities? Are there any resources or websites that you would recommend to fellow job hunters?
So I think I'll start. So I came to the UK in 2015, and I did a 4-year MEng course. That gave me the freedom and flexibility to essentially have more time in finding job opportunities and roles in the UK. But I guess the best way to start is to always be proactive at your university. Your university has a lot of societies and that are dedicated to different industries. So I'm sure at your university, there's a finance society for investment banking, or a sort of technology software engineering one, which is comprised of like computer science engineering students. And these societies often have a lot of job opportunities that they advertise internally. And so you should go to the career fairs, you should go to their events and sign up for their mailing list, because chances are you'll get all these opportunities emailed straight to your inbox. Personally, what I did was, I think in my second year, I dedicated my whole winter break and winter term to looking for job opportunities. And I built up a huge list, maybe 50 to 100 different opportunities across the UK and Europe. And I applied to every single one of them. And you can find these opportunities. Well, back then it was on, you just Googled or you went on Indeed, jobs.co.uk. And then nowadays, LinkedIn has a very good job searching functionality. And that's a much better way, in my opinion, to find roles. Chrissy, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I guess just a little bit of background as well. So I did a 3-year bachelor's degree. So I graduated within 3 years and then went straight into work. Didn't do a placement year, didn't do like job experience during my course. And essentially, apart from what Alfar said, in addition to that, I think what I did most was basically LinkedIn reach outs. So I like this thing. I like to do this thing where I go on LinkedIn and I search for people based on areas that I'm interested in. Maybe they work at a company I'm interested in, or maybe they're working in a role that I want to pursue. I literally just cold email, I think like 20, and usually one person replies, and I set up a coffee chat and I talk to them about kind of, the questions that I have. And this is actually a really good way because it shows initiative, and usually they, if they like you during the chat, they will refer you to opportunities in their company. And I think it's the easiest kind of like entry point because you're interested in the company and you're interested in the role. Outside of that, I think going like kind of making use of university career centers is obviously very helpful. They're professionals. They know how to get you into these companies. So yeah, pretty much that was my process as well.
So actually two different processes, like two different things to try. So maybe you could email some of the companies, or you list all of the companies through a website that you might be interested in. So next on, is there kind of a timeline for you to apply for certain jobs? And I mean, what I'm trying to say is like, when do you prepare your CV, and when should you be prepared to like look for jobs and things like that? So what's the timeline, do you think, in the UK?
So I guess I'll take that one. Right. So if I had to be completely honest with you right now, if you haven't started applying yet, because we're now already in December, almost finished the first academic term, you're already slightly behind the curve, because applications for a lot of companies, and I'm going to talk for investment banks, consulting firms, law firms, sort of these high profile sort of roles, have already opened up since September 1st. So when I was applying for roles myself, I had already prepared my CV back in July, if not June, earlier that year. And the moment the application process started on September 1st, I was already submitting all my applications, cover letters. So really, the application timeline starts in September, and the first batch is recruited through September to December. Now, that doesn't mean that, oh no, I haven't applied yet and now I'm too late. It means that you've just missed this first batch, and there's going to be less positions available because they've already started to fill these roles. The second batch tends to get recruited in the January to March phase. And that's where, I guess, if you haven't started applying, that's where you need to put your effort in. Start sending out more applications. Make sure your CV is done and read through and like vetted by someone you know, or and you're happy with the content of your cover letter as well before you start sending off your applications now, in preparation for the January March intake. So understandably, master students who come to the UK for 1 year are at a disadvantage, because you come in September and the first few months are spent getting to know what the UK is like, settling in. And as such, it's understandable if you miss the winter intake. For undergraduate students who are in their second or third year, you should really be aiming for that winter intake, because you've already settled in the previous year. And so as such, you should be more familiar with the process. I think the main thing that helped me is that you have a group of friends who are applying with you, and as such, you can keep each other accountable, and it creates a little bit of friendly competition. And as such, you'll be able to have a better understanding what the timeline's in, and you guys can stick to the deadlines. Wait, sorry.
Sorry, I don't think I can hear Sarah, but I can see your
Yeah,
mouth
I can see your
moving.
mouth moving as well.
No, still no, sorry.
Okay, hi.
Oh, there you go.
Okay,
Yes.
cool. So Christy, do you have anything to add to that?
I think essentially, I think he's right. As in, like what Alfred said is pretty much the typical application timeline. I do want to say that I got my job apply. I applied to Barclays in February, and then I got the job offer in March. So by all means, it is still possible. It's just a last chance of you to pass through, because obviously they've started filling up the applications. I think for not only full-time roles, if you're looking to do internship roles like over the summer, you can't apply like a month before your summer holiday starts either. It's very uncommon. I think at least for like corporate roles with structured internship schemes. Whereas, for example, if you want to work for a labs during the summer, then it might be a little bit, there's more flexibility in terms of when you want to email the professors or the principal investigators. So it really depends on what you want to do this in the summer. But summer applications for internships have also started in September. So they kind of follow a similar timeline, regardless if you're looking for full-time jobs or internships.
Okay, so first batch starts in September to December, second and so forth is January till March, and then you basically start your job. And so I think it's just more competition in this stage of the game. Okay, how far you mentioned about the CV. So what does an ideal CV in the UK look like? So we kind of know the CV in Indonesia. Does it differ?
So I guess like the nice thing at YIPA is that because of the mentorship program, we have seen a lot of CVs from both UK Indonesian students in the UK and Indonesian students who've just come from Indonesia. And I think Chrissy has more information on this as well, but the main glaring difference that I see when I review all these CVs is that is mainly the content. And I'm gonna like highlight this out because it's very important in my opinion. In Indonesia, the CVs often have your picture or as well as your marital status, whether you're married, divorced, single, your age, where you were born. And in the UK, information like this on your CV is essentially unacceptable because in the UK, there is very strict guidelines on non-discriminatory hiring processes. They don't care what your ethnicity is, your gender, your marital status. What's important is the content on your CV, your education, the projects, your experience. And so what I've seen at JP Morgan when there have been CVs that show up in the pile and there's a picture or like some information that can give away their ethnicity or as such, they cut out the picture or they'll put like a big like black tape over it. So you can't judge a candidate on their gender or their picture. And that's a good thing. So if you have an Indonesian CV and you've just come to the UK, please remove this information and reformat your CV so that it doesn't include that. I think Chrissy can elaborate a bit more as well on the actual content.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I can happily. So in terms of formatting CVs for UK companies, first, don't just describe what you do, but kind of put it into action bullets. So start each bullet with a verb. So for example, let something, coordinate it, organize, manage something. And then additionally, quantify your achievements. So for example, if for example, Sarah wants to put this experience of moderating and organizing this event in her CV, it would be useful to also put, for example, moderated a career panel focused on careers for Indonesians that was attended by 80 people. This was, for example, 5% higher than the usual events or stuff like that. So like little data points, because it helps the employers contextualize your achievements, which is very important. Because, for example, people can just say organize an event for Indonesians in the UK. That doesn't really tell the employers anything. How big was the event? How many people? How many stakeholders did you have? Did you raise any money? Did you spend any money? You know, so it contextualizes your achievements, and that's very, very important. And I think in terms of kind of, there are different types of CVs. It really depends on where you would like to apply. So for example, if you're applying to a consulting role or a finance role, they don't really care as much about your technical kind of like book smart ability. So when I was, because I studied neuroscience, but in my CV, I didn't go into lengthy details around my dissertations, the lab skills that I was able to do, like even like, for example, I didn't say things like I can do Western blots, I can, disintegrate DNA and like sequence it. Because for banks and financial services and consulting, these are less important. I think they focus more on transferable skills, What are the transferable skills that you've learned and how can you apply it in a banking or consulting context? And I think it's why you see a lot of people who study something that's very technical move on into a completely different sector. It's completely possible. It's just a matter of framing your story. But on the flip side, if you are applying to a technical role, so I've had opportunities where I applied to more scientific roles and to do more research, for example. And I'm sure Alfred has that experience applying to engineering companies as well. And that's when you kind of amp up the technical details on your CV, because these are people who understand the sector. These are people who understand, all the technical terms, all the jargon. So that's when you can kind of highlight your technical experiences more. So I would suggest, in terms of approach, have two CVs, one for when you're applying for really technical roles and one for the more generalist audience, where the sector accepts pretty much anyone from any background. So I think that's the two key approaches. And additionally, I would also recommend maximum 3 bullets per experience, and try to scatter the different skills across your CV. Don't just keep saying leadership for every single experience. I think diversity matters. They want to see a range of skills, not just leadership skills. So what I usually do is I pull up a list of common competencies and make sure that, for example, there's 20, and then I have like however many bullets. I make sure that at least each bullet addresses 2 or 3 of them, just to make sure you hit all of those competencies. Because in reality, the first screen of CVs is done by a lot of like technology these days. It's not even people sorting through your CVs, especially if it's like online portals. They're just looking for the keywords. So just make sure you kind of like have those keywords reflected on your CV as well. So I think those are kind of like key tips or tricks. There are more, obviously, and I'm sure if you Google, there's also lots of stuff on there. But yeah.
All right, so I got quantify your achievements, use action verbs, have like several types of CVs for each of the jobs that you apply for, and all of the other tips with the bullet points and the qualifications that is needed by the job. So for the audience who wants to ask questions, feel free to chat in the chat box. We'll answer your questions hopefully in the question and answer session, and just feel free to drop your questions there. So I would like to continue. Besides a CV, companies also require cover letters, right, when applying for certain roles. So what should be included in this letter?
Cool. Okay. So in terms of cover letters, it's usually 3 paragraphs. First, why, kind of like the role you're applying. So like just a straightforward, I'm applying for this role because I found it here. Simple. It's not even a paragraph, really. It's a sentence. Second kind of block of content is why you as a candidate, why are you fitting for this role? And thirdly, it's why the company, why did you choose the company? So it's kind of that structure. And I would highly recommend mirroring your cover letter with the job specification. So if you pull up a job specification, they usually have a list of skills that they're looking for, or description of what you will do day to day. So I would pick experiences that are most fitting to, sounds most similar to what they're looking for, and then elaborate it within the second paragraph of why me as a candidate. And don't be afraid to mirror the words that they're using. It's not plagiarism. It's like just mirror the way they talk, because that's exactly what the machines are going to pick up from the cover letters. And I think it might sound quite like methodical and impersonal in a way, but unfortunately, it's just kind of, you just want to get through the system. I think it's actually very rare that people sit down and look at everyone's cover letters. So I think that's why the mirroring techniques work. I think outside of that as well, sometimes people use the cover letter as a way to repeat their CV. I would highly discourage that, because they already have your CV. So what they want is not the same bullets that you've put on your CV. It's not the same explanation. It's more towards what's not on your CV, that, what's a case study, a more specific example, a more elaborative kind of like a double click to that experience that you've mentioned on your CV. So I would refrain from repeating anything on your CV and making it too long. I think 1 page maximum. Make sure it's concise. And then, yeah, I think that's pretty much the kind of like, in a nutshell, how you make a good cover letter.
Okay. Alfar, do you have anything to add to that? Or does Christy already cover everything?
I think Chrissy summarized it quite well. And one thing that people always tend to ask is, should I be customizing this cover letter for every single company? And realistically, if you're applying to 50 plus companies in 3 months, it will get very repetitive, and it's not very time efficient if you wrote a cover letter from scratch every single time for each company. And so really what you should be doing is grouping each company into the different sectors. So all the consulting ones will have one sort of format, all the banking ones will have the same sort of format. And let's say for myself, engineering, I did hardware or robotics. I would make sure that those ones were a bit more technical. And in my cover letter, I would dive in a bit more into my master's thesis or the projects that I'd done throughout university. And you obviously change the first section, the company name. Make sure you actually, when you're doing this, make sure you check your cover letter before you send it, and you've actually changed the company name, because I've had a few people contact me and say that, oh, I sent the wrong cover letter. I just used my normal template, but I forgot to update it from JP Morgan to Goldman Sachs. And that will most likely be an instant, X. And what a shame of an opportunity if you waste it because you were careless. So if you are templating your cover letters, make sure you are always updating the name, the address, the person that you're addressing in the letter. And yeah, just make sure you have a little checklist before you send it off.
Great. So generally, the whys have to be stated in the cover letter, and you do not want to repeat your CV. And if you want to have some certain templates, be aware of every template, every cover letter that you make, so that you won't have those tiny but very big mistakes. Okay, let's move on. So after the CV, the cover letter, we usually have interview processes. So what is the interview process like here? So what should we do to prepare for the interviews and assessment centers?
So I guess it varies from industry to industry, but generally it will always start with a HR interview. Someone will interview you from HR and make sure that you're actually interested in the role and that you essentially will be a good fit for the company. So recently I've been attending some interview training sessions at work, and because my team is currently hiring, and I've participated in a few interviews. For graduate roles, what traditionally happens is that you would have a technical phone interview, and where someone like myself or someone a bit more junior will interview you and ask you general sort of questions about the role, why you're interested in it, and what sort of skills you bring to the table. If you pass through that if we vet you and pass you on to the next stage, you'll usually be invited to an assessment center. And an assessment center is traditionally a day where you are invited to the main office, and then you'll be grouped together with 10, 12 other people who are applying for essentially the same role. And it becomes a sort of an internal competition between your group to see who will actually get the role. However, with COVID this year, the interview process has changed slightly, and it's been moved to a lot more virtual interviews. So for instance, when we're interviewing interns or interviewing graduates at the moment, it'll be a Zoom call like this, and we'll speak to you asking about the role, why you're interested in it, etc. I think, as far as I understand, they've replaced assessment centers, because to do an assessment center with 12 people over Zoom, I guess it is not as effective as it is in person, because you can't really judge people's character traits from just a screen. And so what they're replacing it with at JP Morgan is that they've turned it into essentially a day-long sort of interview where you go through 3 to 4 rounds of interviews over Zoom with different members of, I guess, like the interviewing board. So it would be someone like myself, then someone a bit more senior, and then an executive director who is at the top and would be in charge of the organization. And I guess, so the key takeaway from this is that you have to make sure that your internet connection is stable, that you are familiar with doing interviews and presenting yourself on a webcam. And that's simple things such as looking at the camera and speaking into the camera, having your notes up by the camera, which is what I have right now, and maintaining eye contact. Because at the end of the day, you can't convey all the normal body language that you would be able to, that they'd be able to perceive in real life through the screen. And so you need to, I guess, exaggerate your movements, exaggerate your gestures, and remain focused on the camera. I think Chrissy will be able to add some more stuff as well.
I think, yeah, on that note, I would also like to flag that there are sector-specific influences in some of these interviews. I think Afar has kind of pinpointed the general kind of trajectory of an interview. For example, if you're applying to consulting or any professional services kind of sector, the interview is usually very kind of very technical. So for example, for a consulting, if you're applying to the likes of McKinsey, Bain, BCG, so they have what's called a case consulting interview. And that's a very different format compared to your usual, why do you want to work for us? So it's a very different. I would suggest checking out a few resources. Just type case consulting interviews. There are loads and loads of resources on the internet, but it's essentially questions that is less about why you want to work for them. It's more about how you think. They want to see how you solve a problem, how you approach unfamiliar situations, and how you work through essentially like some simple arithmetic problems, things that you will encounter when you actually work as a consultant. So for those types of interviews, I would highly, highly suggest practice because there is a way for you to answer those questions. It's not something you can wing. It's almost like it's very methodical, and there is a secret formula, if you want to call it that, to answer these types of questions. So it can be things like estimate the number of divorce that happens annually in the UK. And you'd be like, where do you start? So there are techniques to break down those types of questions. And for finance, for example, in the assessment centers, as Alfar mentioned, because of COVID, they have kind of revamped some of the ways they've done recruiting. So for example, at Barclays, it moved from group teamwork. Now we do presentations. So they will give you pre-materials beforehand saying, this is the problem we're facing. You're required to make, for example, a client deck explaining these sorts of things. Please do the analysis beforehand, come in with your results. So you can do some pre-work and then you present it to your interviewer. So that's more kind of like putting you in the role that you will actually do. So you will come in with your data, you will come in with your slides, you will present and stuff like that. And I think what's important during interviews at the later stages, when you're meeting more senior people, they're generally very impressed if you keep up with current affairs. So how are they in the news recently? What for? Or is there any like sector news that are really, really big? So for example, if you're applying to finance, the Bank of England is due to announce whether UK banks can start distributing dividends again later in December. And that's a big deal, because we haven't been distributing dividends because of the pandemic. So things like that, like keep up with the news and make sure you're actually well versed in the area, what usually is an easy way to kind of impress a more senior interviewer. So yeah, I think that's kind of, and that's kind of my addition there.
Actually, before we move on, I think I want to just mention that Chrissy was talking about how for finance and consulting, I'm going to add one for sort of the software engineering sort of fields. When we are interviewing people, what we want you to bring to the table is your ability to break down a problem. So chances are we will throw a problem at you that you've most likely never seen before. But the most important thing to do is when you're breaking down this problem is that you continue to speak your thoughts and explain your ideas. How are you breaking this problem down? So for instance, for a software engineering problem, the first stage will be, we'll give you some sort of programming assignment and it'll be pretty simple. But then we'll try to break your design and we'll continue grilling you for 15, 20 minutes because we want to see how you deal with these problems under pressure. Because in the real workplace, let's say you come up with a design, you're going to have to sell and convince this design. You're going to have to sell this design to someone essentially, and then you'll have to convince someone a bit more senior. Why are we doing it this way? And those people on the other side will push back and say, oh, I don't agree with this. What's your reasoning behind this? And so you need to articulate your thoughts and your reasoning behind why you chose this solution. And that's a very important skill to have. But yeah.
Okay, very insightful. One is from the consulting side of it, and one is more of the technical engineering part. But, well, I think we still have to get used to the condition right now with all of the video chatting. And That's a very fair point that Alvar said, that to really focus on the camera, because you don't have like a real person in front of you, like not virtually, I mean. So very interesting point. So another question that has been in my mind is, what is the job market like for Indonesians in the UK? So Indonesian students that wanted to search for a job in the UK. So do most students stay here after graduating, or do they just go back to Indonesia?
Cool.
Chrissy, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I can do.
Okay.
Um, so let's think a little bit. So Alfred and I have been in the UK for 5 years, and over the years, I think generally we see most people move back to Indonesia after they finish their degrees. Maybe it's because they want to, maybe it's because they couldn't find jobs. There are various reasons, but I would say the rate at which people, there's a lot less people staying than coming back home. I think a lot more people just go home for good. Um, and in terms of whether it's difficult, I guess it is, in a sense that there is a pandemic going on. A lot of companies are freezing a lot of their graduate schemes. A lot of companies kind of like take more of a, like they don't want to hire as much. They're trying to cut down costs and stuff like that. But I think if you focus on the challenges and use COVID as an excuse to not be as proactive or not be as motivated to apply for jobs, then you've already lost. Because I feel like there is always going to be something that stops people from applying. So, for example, when I graduated in 2018, it was a lot of Brexit talks, and people are like, oh, UK companies are not going to hire foreigners because they're about to quit the EU. So, like, they're going to focus on the local talents, for example. And then, even before that, there are other things that come up. We live in a world that constantly changes, and there is always going to be employment hurdles. So I feel like don't focus on the fact that there is a pandemic going on. There are still companies recruiting, so I wouldn't get discouraged. And I think at the end of the day, lots of people quit companies every day as well. So they have to replace those people, and they want to build a healthy pipeline for their, human resource. So there is always opportunity. So I wouldn't get discouraged just because there's a pandemic. I think we can dive into this a little bit later, and I think Alpha has more details, but it has actually become easier, or it will become easier, effective from 1st of January 2021, for Indonesians to secure jobs in the UK, hopefully, because of the changing regulations due to Brexit. So I think, if anything, I think there are more opportunities ahead.
Sarah, I think you're muted.
Yep, problem in Zoom. It's always like that. Okay. So Christy already mentioned that the UK is going to have a new workers visa that would be more beneficial for us Indonesians to search for jobs here. Do you want to elaborate on that, Alfar?
Yeah, I guess. Okay, so how to start? This is probably like one of the most important topics in this webinar today. So I'm trying to decide how to best tackle it. Okay, so as we've mentioned throughout this webinar, starting next summer 2021, the UK government is introducing a new immigration route for international students. So, and this is called the graduate worker visa. What the graduate worker visa will allow you to do is that after you graduate, you'll be able to remain in the United Kingdom for up to 2 years without requiring a sponsor. So a little bit of history as well. This isn't the first time the UK government has had an immigration route like this. I think in 2004 up to 2012, they had a similar scheme called the post-study work visa. And what this post-study work visa did is exactly the same. It allowed you to stay in the UK as an international student for 2 years after graduation. They removed it in 2012 because what they were finding was that the majority of people who were staying in the UK on this PSW visa weren't actually working skilled jobs. And what is a skilled job? A skilled job is considered something like, well, today, when you have to work in an industry which requires sponsorship, essentially. And so that could be finance, consulting, media and technology. What's not a skilled job is something like working at Tesco's as a cashier or as a ball boy at Wimbledon. And what they were finding was that a lot of people were just using the post-study work visa to remain in the UK to work as cashiers, to sustain themselves. Essentially, santai, you know, enjoying life, the UK. And so they removed that program in 2012. Luckily, last year they announced that they would be reintroducing it under the new name of the graduate worker visa. And while there is currently a lack of clarity as to when and how the process will go through, what we know so far is that it will be eligible for people who hold a valid Tier 4 student visa as of summer 2021 and have completed a valid university degree in the UK. So for instance, if you started this past September and you'll be finishing your course next September 2021, you will be valid for the visa. If you started your undergraduate degree in, I guess, 2018, Christy, right? That would mean that you graduate in summer 2021, you will also be valid for it. Now, unfortunately, if you completed your undergraduate degree before, so let's say you graduated this past year, you aren't valid for that visa. And that's unfortunate, but that's just how it works. And the most important thing about this graduate worker visa, in my opinion, is that, so Christy and I are both on Tier 2 working visas, and these visas require a sponsor from a company. What this means is that it limits us in our job opportunities, because let's say tomorrow I want to leave JP Morgan to quit and work at a startup. I can't do that because someone needs to re-sponsor my visa. But what this graduate worker visa will do is that it will allow you to apply for roles and give you the flexibility of leaving them whenever you want. And so what I'd encourage you to do is, as you take on this application season, of course, still apply to roles at companies that will sponsor the Tier 2 visa, but also take this as an opportunity to apply to companies that are smaller, who traditionally wouldn't sponsor a Tier 2 visa. And it will open up your network. It will open up the number of opportunities that you have, because suddenly smaller companies with 10, 15 employees will be able to employ you, whereas previously they wouldn't have had the sponsorship capability. The UK government hasn't, I'd like to point out as well that the UK government hasn't fully finalized the graduate worker visa yet. I think it's because of COVID, and hopefully there'll be more clarity in the coming months. We're expecting a bit more news in the sort of January, February sort of period. But as you take on this application season, if you are graduating next year in 2021, you can safely assume that you will be valid for the visa. One thing that I'd like to point out right now is that if you are graduating next year and you're currently tuning into this webinar from Indonesia and you're not in the UK right now, please keep in mind that you have to enter the UK before April 1st, 2021 for you to be eligible for the graduate worker visa. Essentially, you need to complete at least one term in the United Kingdom in order for you to get this opportunity. So if you are seeking to use and make the most of this graduate worker visa and you're still in Indonesia or abroad, please make sure you enter before April 1st.
Okay, so that means that opportunities are opening up for us Indonesians to seek for jobs in the UK. So I don't know if Alfar and Christy could see it, but we have like a lot of questions on the chat box right now. Are you ready for this?
I'm sure we'll be more than prepared.
Okay, cool. So the first question comes from Pandu. So he asked, is the graduate program suitable for a master's degree?
I guess I'll take this because I did a master's.
Yeah.
I was on the graduate program. If I had to be completely honest with you, in my opinion, the graduate program is a bit of a waste if you've done a technical master's. So let's say you went, in a way, I could have joined JP Morgan after I did my 3-year course. But what the graduate program does and is good is that essentially it's like an extension of university, but in the workplace. And so you are entering the workplace with other people your own age, with similar experiences. And so you build this network from day one. And this network of people your own age inside the company will bring you so many opportunities. I recently switched jobs internally, and I made the most of it by reaching out through my graduate class, my graduate network. But so would I recommend doing the graduate program? Yes, if you like the stability of the graduate program, because they sort of teach you along the way as well of what is expected of the company. And it gives you a sort of safety net, as opposed to if you joined as an experienced hire. I'd say that if you had previously worked before, though, because I know there are Indonesian students who came here to the UK to do a master's and they have 1 to 3 years worth of experience, the graduate program is not as worth it for you guys.
I would also just to kind of add one thing, most graduate programs, especially in finance, sponsor you to do a qualification throughout the duration of your program. So this is free professional qualification that you can take. They pay for all the books, they pay for the teachers, they pay for everything. So if you're looking to get a professional charter in any field, like that your company is in, like for example, if you do ACA or CIMA or CFA, they actually sponsor it if you're part of their grad scheme. So I think worth considering if you haven't worked before, don't have any charter, and want to do this qualification for free, because they are quite costly, and it's one of the things they do to take care of you in a way. So good flag, I would say.
Okay, still in the route of master's degree. So Christian has a question. So can any of the panelists provide us if 1 year taught master's degree students on applying for corporate internship in the UK? So how does that go? So based on your experience, should we change our tier 4 visa and reapply for a work visa and things like that? Or should we just wait and apply for a full-time position when we graduate instead?
For a work visa. Okay, so there's this like misconception that as a tier 4 visa holder that you can't work. You can. Okay, correction. It depends on what it says on your BRP. So for the majority of tier 4 visa holders, your BRP will say something like tier 4 student visa, and then underneath, right to work 20 hours during term time. And that means you can work full time. Well, you can work up to 20 hours a week during your calendar dates of your university. However, what that also means is that outside of those calendar dates of your university, so your Easter break, your summer break, you can apply and work full time as if you were just any other employee. And so that's what I did. When in my second year, I worked over the summer at one of my internships, and there was no requirement to change my visa. However, I'm also aware, and this is some like edge cases, some courses don't allow you to work 20 hours during the term time, and it depends on what kind of sponsor your university is. And so if that's the case, you'll have to ask your careers advisor. But as far as I understand, if it doesn't say you're allowed to work 20 hours during the term time, chances are you're not supposed to work at all. And that's the way your tier 4 visa is. And that's just based on your course. But in terms of like for summer internships, etc., you can just apply. You can assume that you do not need any sponsorship when you're applying for an internship and you're filling in the application form and it says, do you have the right to work in the United Kingdom for this position? You put yes. And going back to the post-study work visa as well, the graduate worker visa as well, as you apply for graduate roles this coming year, you can also comfortably put yes, because the graduate worker visa will kick in by the time you start. So they will no longer have to sponsor you. And you can explain it to them if they reach out to you. Oh, I noticed that your passport is Indonesian. You can then reach out, you can reply to the email and say, this is because of the graduate worker visa, and then send them the link from the UK government website.
Okay, so I think Yipa also has a short note of how the working visa works in your Instagram. So um, feel free to drop by to their Instagram account. I think Christy has the address behind her. Yes. Okay. We're going to move on to another question. It's more about the job application materials that you need. So this one comes from Christabel. The question is a cover letter a must for a job application in the UK? So if we apply for more, like a bunch of jobs, do we need all of them to have a cover letter?
Okay. No is the short answer. I think I generally only send in cover letters if I'm applying not through a portal. So a lot of companies have their dedicated portal. So if you go to, for example, Barclays.com, they have like their own portal. You just enter your details, just upload your CV. They don't actually ask for a cover letter. So in that case, you don't have to, because chances are they don't need it. That's why they don't ask for it. But if I'm applying for jobs through someone's email, if someone has say, hey, send your CV to this person because I think there is a position for you that we see you fit, but it's through an email application, I would send a cover letter just to give context, basically. Because if you just attach like, hey, here's my CV, they don't really have context about like why you're there, you know? So I would attach cover letters in a sense. I think with some companies, they do make it mandatory, in which case I attach it, but I don't think, like, I think cover letters, I think it's kind of like I only really do it if I have to, because it does take time, especially if you need to explain every single time why you want to work for this company. That requires research, right? That requires you stalking the company, seeing their values, whether they've done any interesting projects that you want to call out in your cover letter. So it's a lot of effort. So yeah, the short answer is I would say no. Yeah, depends.
Yeah, I think I'm going to tack on to that as well, in the sense that when I get cover letters, when we're interviewing candidates and I see the cover letter, we tend to not really go through that cover letter ourselves. The cover letter is more for HR to get a judgment of you. But when the CV and cover letter arrives at my desk, what will happen is that chances are I won't even look at it personally, because I know that you've probably templated it and sent it off to like 50 different companies. So I will only tend to look at it if like there's something that really stands out, like you claim to know, to be an expert in something, then I'll probably grill you on that. But apart from that, you don't, like Chrissy said, you don't have to attach it to every company unless it's mandatory. If there is the option, I would recommend you do it.
Okay, so definitely not a must, but we see that where it is needed. So another thing about the materials that you need for a job application. So is how this question, sorry, this question comes from Fanny. And is having a reference letter in applying for a job important in the UK? So do we need some kind of reference from somebody else?
I have never applied to a job that requires me to submit a reference letter unless it's for a research PhD postgraduate thought, like postgraduate research positions. I think typically they don't ask for it. What they do actually, when they have offered you the job, they will do what's called a background check, due diligence, and that's basically them pulling out your CV and contacting every single thing that you said on your CV to verify for it. So this is very, very important, because you would think, I come from Indonesia, I grew up in Indonesia, there is no way they can contact SMA 1, SMAK 1, atau kayak my school gitu. They do. Like, I'm very, very surprised at this actually, because I went to a school that's quite small in Jakarta and I put it on my CV obviously. And then my principal reached back out and I'm like, congratulations on your new job. They just contacted us. And I'm like, how did they contact you? Like, you're all the way in Indonesia. So they do the background check. They have like a third party specialist that does this. They receive your CV when they've offered you the job, and then they go through things one by one, which is why it's also important to never lie on your CV or cover letter, because they do check it. So like, for example, I did an internship with the Ministry of Health in Indonesia. They did actually reach out to the ministry and the contacts that I provided with them. I think that's how they verify for jobs. They don't really ask for references typically.
Yeah, I agree with that. And for to stress how important it is not to lie, I didn't grow up in Indonesia. I grew up in the Middle East. I moved around a lot, and I graduated from a school in Qatar in the Middle East. They reached out and contacted my old teachers there to verify my grades and get like an impression of what I was like as a student. And so make sure you just don't lie on your CV, because that will ruin they will retract the offer, I guarantee you.
Wow. I didn't know it was that intense, but wow. So the important lesson is to never lie on your CV. And okay, still on the Alfar, you mentioned that LinkedIn is now a platform that is very beneficial for us to search for jobs. So there's a question from Anissa. So she asks, would not having a LinkedIn disadvantage me significantly?
I mean, look, while it's not absolutely necessary, when you are competing with people who are determined and very driven to get these roles, these are your competition. You should be maximizing yourself through every opportunity, every outlet possible. So unless you have a very valid reason why you don't like LinkedIn, I don't know, maybe you are concerned about data privacy. Let's just say that. You should have LinkedIn. You should have LinkedIn. You should have a portfolio. You should have a CV. You should be maximizing yourself on every platform possible. It doesn't mean that you have to post on LinkedIn every day, like, oh, I've achieved whatever grade on my course, or delighted to announce that I'm now an incoming summer analyst at JP Morgan. But just having it there will essentially verify your existence to your employer. So I would recommend just making one, even if it's just your university course and any experiences you have, mirroring what you have on your CV. That is more than enough.
And I think to add to that, it's more than just you having a LinkedIn for companies. It's also what can you do with LinkedIn. You know, LinkedIn has grown so much. It has amazing analytics. It allows you to connect with people. It allows you to see work history, or, you know, I think what I really like to do, and I think a lot of people, everyone should do this, if you get an interview invitation and they actually tell you who it is, LinkedIn them. Like, honestly, it's very, very helpful, because I did this with my interviewers a lot of the time, and then they expect you to come in well researched. So if you bring things up like, oh, I did a browse and I noticed you went to the same university. How did you enjoy that? Because when I was there, this is what I found. I think at the end of the day, interviewers love it when you create a personal connection beyond, you know, just the technical expertise. Because at the end of the day, they need to think to themselves, do I want these people as my colleagues, as my coworkers? Is this someone I can see fitting into this company? So making that personal connection is usually really helpful. And I think that's why it's a two-way street. Like, LinkedIn is very, very helpful to help you prepare for interviews or like find people as well.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so definitely, it's not a must, but that it's definitely a very good platform to have. So we're going to move on with questions about dealing with rejection. So I know that we as job hunters always get this type of thing. So this question comes from Tian. I have a question on the method of applying to many companies at the same time. So, after getting back the results, how do you manage to reject some of them if you got accepted to more than you can handle? So, it's not like the other rejection, it's us rejecting the jobs.
Okay, that's a good one. I've been in this position before. Let's quickly just go over the fact that chances are, as you apply to lots of companies, you will receive a lot of rejection emails from these companies. What you need to keep in mind is that it's always a numbers game at the end of the day. Perhaps on that day, the interviewer wasn't feeling you, didn't think you were a good match, and they rejected you. And the best thing to do is to take it as a learning experience and try again at a different company. For the topic of rejecting offers. So I had a interesting situation, I think 2-3 years ago, where I was applying for a summer internship. I was fortunate enough to receive 3 different offers simultaneously for that same summer. The best thing to do is once you have these 3 offers, or however many offers, what I did was, well, first of all, I looked at the pay. And what I tried to do is I tried to negotiate the pay higher. And that's perhaps not the most important takeaway from this, but what you can do is you can use it as leverage. You can say that, hey, I have an offer from a competing company in wherever. They're offering me this much salary. However, I do like the thought of working at your company, and I can be swayed by asking for, I don't know, £5,000 more, let's say. So you're in a very lucky position that you have multiple job offers. I know some companies try to pressure you into accepting straight away. Remember that legally what they have to do is they have to give you 14 days from the day they serve you the contract for you to sign it. Take your time. Don't rush it. Second of all, these contracts aren't necessarily binding, right? There are plenty of situations where, and I was considering it as well, I signed the JP Morgan contract to return as a full-time, and I shopped around. I applied to high-frequency trading firms, other sort of financial institutions, and I was receiving offers from them. And if I'd received a considerably better offer, I would have just can email JP Morgan and said, hey, I'm going to cancel on my contract. Sorry. And people say that, oh, what happens if you get put on a blacklist? That's actually a myth. It's not true. Because why would they blacklist you forever when they already offered you the job? They know that you are a good fit for the company. They know that you're qualified and that you'd be able to do the job well. So for them to blacklist you forever would be just a waste of their opportunity in hiring you. So the takeaway from that is take your time. Don't feel rushed. A common tactic that HR do is they will spam you every day with email or try to call you into signing the contract straight away. Take your time. Say that, hey, I'm waiting on a few other offers, and stand your ground and say that I'll get back to you by end of next week.
And don't burn bridges, by the way. Just because you're rejecting that offer, please also be nice about it and say, keep in touch. I'm keen to hear any other opportunities in the future and stuff like that. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, if you're working in the same sector, if it's like similar roles, people know each other, even though they work for this different companies. So make sure you don't burn any bridges before you even start working. Yeah.
Okay, so I think the important part is to know that you have the time to think about the offer, right? You have like 14 days, as Alpha said, and you should really think about it. And now we have another question. I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name. Is Selika, I think. So how long do companies usually get back to you? So if they haven't gotten back to you in a while, does that automatically mean that you're rejected?
No.
No.
Okay,
Yeah. The short answer is no.
Yeah, no. Basically, for the early stages of an application, so things like video interview where you record yourself, or if it's like more of the situational judgment testings that are online, usually the reply comes instantly, actually, because the portal, as soon as you submit something, they just automatically send out the next stage because it's automated via like technology. For the later parts, things like interview, for example, you did an interview and they say we'll get back to you next week and it's been a month, most likely they have what's called the waitlist pile. So it's kind of like they're not sure yet if you are the best fit, but they're not absolutely sure that they should reject you either. So you might be stuck on that pile because of other considerations. At the end of the day, applying for jobs, people will always evaluate you relative to the rest of your competitions. So, they don't actually see someone in isolation. So at the end of the day, there will be piles of that. Sometimes it's a yes, eventually, sometimes it's a no. But I think it doesn't necessarily mean that you're rejected. No, so you shouldn't lose kind of like hope, and at the same time, don't be afraid to chase. They have a responsibility to get back to you. Some companies even have a responsibility to give you feedback, even if they've rejected you. So make sure to kind of maximize that, because I think one of the pitfalls of job hunting is that you keep getting rejected and you don't ask for feedback. How are you meant to improve? So I think that's the key opportunity there.
So when would you say it's best for us to start reaching out and asking for the process of our job application?
It depends on the company, depends on a lot of things. Let's say it's investment banking. That's a good example. That's a very competitive field, very tough. And chances are HR will have gone through your CV. If you haven't heard anything back by the end of like a month or 2 months, I would probably say you're not going to be considered, because that is a very, very competitive field. And personally, I wouldn't bother reaching out. But if you're applying to a smaller company and it's been a month, you should definitely email their HR representative. Hey, can I get an update on my application status? And chances are it's not anything that you've done wrong. It might be the people they've passed on your application to internally, so someone like myself, and we haven't gotten around to watching your video interview yet, or we haven't been able to compare you with a few other candidates who were waiting to interview next week. And so it takes some time. And so you shouldn't feel down that, oh no, I've been rejected straight away. But yeah, feel free to reach out after about a month or so, I guess.
Okay, I think it's good to have like a mentor in this type of situations, don't you think, guys?
I guess like, okay, I mean, that's, I guess, a good chance for us to signpost our mentorship program at IPA. Essentially what the mentorship program does, it's something that I lead as my work stream at IPA. And it essentially gives you as an Indonesian student in the UK access to Indonesian professionals working here. And these are people who are at different stages in their career. Some people have just started, some people have been around for 10 plus years, and they all have different insights into how your particular industry will work. They can give you tips and tricks, what to put on your CV, what to put on your cover letter. And there are people that you can sort of go to and reach out and say, not just for, oh, can you please look at my CV, but also for you to get to know, like, why did you choose this field? Why are you still here? Or why did you suddenly switch from, let's say you reached out to Chrissy for her to be your mentor. Why did you decide to quit neuroscience and pursue banking? Was it just the money, or was it more to it as well? You could ask the same question to me. Was it just the money, or was it whatever? And so this mentorship program, you can access it on our website. It's at yipa.org.uk/ I think it's Britcham-associates. But Chrissy will paste that link in the chat. It's essentially a booklet. The booklet is full of lots of different contacts, and you can feel free to email and reach out to all these different working professionals in the UK.
Cool. So that's a brief introduction on what you can have when you're applying for a IPA membership. Am I correct? And a mentorship as well. So let's move on to the numerous questions that we have here. So now we have a question about visa sponsorship, and this comes from Marshinta. So can we know whether the company is able to provide sponsorship or not? So we can target the right companies to apply. And the other question would be, where can we find such list?
Okay, so this is a tricky one. Going back, I'm going to signpost a graduate worker visa that if you're graduating post 2021, so if you're not just in 2021, but after 2021 as well, you'll be valid for this graduate worker visa. You can just sort of ignore the visa application process and just apply for these companies. However, if we're talking traditionally, or you're in the situation right now, how I always assumed it was smaller companies tended to not sponsor the working visa. And chances are when you look at the the job specification, it will say this role is only open for UK or European residents. And if you see that, then you obviously can apply. If you're unsure as to the visa sponsorship status of a company, email them. That's what HR is for. That's what they get paid to do. They get paid to clarify these sort of questions. And they will be more than happy to point you and tell you, hey, yes, we do sponsor a visa. In terms of where to find these companies, there is no specific place. I know some societies at universities, I remember at Imperial, they would collate a list that was tier 2 visa friendly, but that depends on the society. Chances are you should just apply anyway. And as you go through the process, once you have a HR contact at the company, send that email. Hey, just want to clarify, does this role sponsor the tier 2 visa? And if it doesn't, then don't waste your time, because they're not going to suddenly, well, it is very unlikely that they will go through the hassle of sorting out tier 2 visas for someone. It's not impossible, but it's very rare.
Okay, good insight, but you don't have to worry about that once you graduate post 2021, right? because of the graduate working visa.
Yep, exactly.
Great. So I think we have room for one more question. So this comes from Marcel. So do you think a work experience in the UK is an absolute necessity for recruitment? And what are the competitive advantages that Indonesian students have when applying for a UK job?
Okay, great question. The short answer is no, not at all. So I'll give you an example. I have never worked in the UK before I started my job with Barclays. I worked in Hong Kong, I worked in Indonesia, but never in the UK. And I think it doesn't really matter where you have worked previously. What matters is how you frame your experience and how that is transferable to the position you're applying to. So I think geographic locations matters less in that sense. They want to just make sure you have the skills or you have the necessary experience and you have the exposure. But I think most of all, if you're worried about the fact that they're like, oh, you've never worked in the UK, we're not sure about you, just make sure to kind of present yourself as someone who's willing to learn, who's open-minded, and who's kind of like, easygoing, easy to adjust to the working culture of the UK, open to new ideas, open to new experiences. And I think that will kind of plug that hole over there, that very small hole, to be fair. So I don't think it's mandatory at all. I think in terms of how you build the narrative around the fact you've worked elsewhere, people actually like that. They like diversity and they like people coming from different backgrounds. So I think what a lot of people don't realize is that Indonesia is very different from the UK because we're a developing country and the problems there are much more grassroots sometimes, and the problems is very different to the problems that you will face working for a UK company. But it's fine, you can mention it in your interviews. If anything, they find it really, really insightful. So I think it doesn't matter where you've worked, it matters how you explain how you work and how that fits into the position you're applying to. I think that's the brief answer.
Okay, so I think that wraps up all of the questions, even though all of the questions have not been answered yet. I implore you to reach out to Yipa. I think Christy and Alpha, would you be willing to be contacted, or should they just go to Yipa instead?
You can feel free to reach out to me by email. This is what I do as part of my job at YIPA. I'll post my email on here. Give me a second. Wait, actually, I just saw a question around. Does YIPA still open for membership now? I read, yeah. So right now, we're not currently recruiting for the current cycle of YIPA Bridgeham Associates. However, we will be reopening that program early next year. In terms of how to contact me, the easiest way to contact me would be my email, which is, I think it's this. And I'm sorry, I try to reply within the day. I could get busy. Actually, before quickly, Andreas has been asking this question nonstop. Could you please elaborate your previous statement on having a 1-year master degree in the UK after having 1 to 3 year experience? This was with regard to the graduate program. And so what I was saying was that if you've already worked for 1 to 3 years elsewhere in Indonesia or in a different country, and then you're doing a 1-year master's degree here now to reskill, I don't think the graduate program is worth it for you because you have work experience that you can sell yourself with. You can say that I have worked for 1 to 3 years. I deserve more pay, more responsibility than someone who is fresh out of university and is just a fresh graduate.
Okay. So moving on to Christy, where do you think people should contact you?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat actually. Yeah, feel free to reach out to any of the YIPA channels, or if you want to reach out to me or Afar personally, you can reach out to Afar via email, you can reach out to me via LinkedIn. I'm more responsive than, actually, yeah, you can reach out email juga. Tapi just to make it less formal, jadi lebih chat. I prefer, like when I'm giving kind of like answers to your questions, I prefer knowing kind of your background as well, so I can tailor my guidance. So I would prefer actually like chatting and getting to know you. So feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. But yeah.
Cool. So we've reached the end of our event today. So I would give the closing remarks first to either Christy or Alfar from YIPA. It could be either one of you guys, just to say thanks for people here that have attended our event.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for attending. I know that it's a Saturday and we started quite early. And for those of you who are tuning in from Indonesia, it's getting late and it's almost dinner time. Hopefully, this webinar has been very helpful. And like we were saying earlier, we're here to help. As part of our initiative at IPA the last couple of years, we want to increase our student outreach and help you guys as well. Because at the end of the day, if you guys get jobs in the United Kingdom, you could potentially become, you will most likely become one of our members as well. And that will increase our member count. And that's something that we want as well. So essentially, this is a very symbiotic relationship where we want you guys to succeed as much as possible. So thank you for tuning in today. Remember to check us out on our socials and feel free to reach out to us on our emails as well.
Cool. Thank you so much, Alpha, for the closing remarks. So now we're going to tune back into the people who made this event possible from Pepe UK and Pepe Greater Leeds. So first of all, Janet from Pepe Greater Leeds, do you want to say your closing remarks?
Yeah. Thank you, Sarah, Kirsty, and Alvar for the comprehensive discussion. It was really insightful and very useful. I myself am applying for jobs, and I can vouch that all the tips they gave you is very useful and like based on facts. Yeah, see you in the next Pepe UK Talk or Bincang Karir with Pepe Greater Leeds. For the full Q&A summary, you can check in Pepe Greater Leeds LinkedIn sometime next week, probably on Wednesday. We'll be posting all of the questions and answers you asked that didn't get addressed, or if you want to get back to it for a reminder. Thank you.
Would you like to tell us about Pepe Greater Leeds Instagram or something so that they could reach out to you as well?
Yes, of course. I'll put it in the chat. You can follow all our social media channels. It's Pepe Greater Leeds. We have a YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you found everything useful.
Great. Thank you so much, Janet. So now we're going to have our last closing remarks from Mas Danny from Pepe UK. Mas Danny?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sarah, for moderating this wonderful webinar. I'm very overwhelmed, actually. Thank you so much. So I won't add much to that. I can see that from the chat, actually, the plethora of questions and interest from the audience. So therefore, just remind everyone that we have another webinar actually coming out this month. So the next one will be on 19 December. This will be about kuliah gratis S3 tanpa S2, so how to study PhD without master in the UK. And that would be very interesting also. So if you do not mind, please join again. But in the similar time, we're also like having another event also. So make sure to mark on your calendar, and we'll get back to you with more information on that in the coming days, actually. So if you have comments, remarks, requests, or for future events that we can discuss with this kind of very expert people, so don't hesitate to contact us through our email or our PPI Instagrams. And once again, I thank you for our distinguished speaker. Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Alpha. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that we could deliver the similar event in the next time. And thank you also so much for our co-organizer, Janet, Dahlia, and team from PPI Greater Leeds. Thank you so much. Pleasure to work with you guys. And last but not least, thank you for all the participants that joined for today. This is your forum, actually, guys. And we hope that you all had some takeaways from today. And you're able to discuss this with your colleagues and hopefully implement it in your post-study or career plan in the next time. Thank you. If you want to have something like spend your weekend with your family after this, enjoy your time, and thank you. Until next time. Bye-bye. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for Mas Danny. And so that is it from us. Thank you so much for YIPA, Pepe UK, and Pepe Greater Leeds for this wonderful event. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Halo.
Mas, ya ampun, maaf banget.
Halo Janet,
Ya
Janet.
Allah.
Aku mau kasih tahu satu nih Janet. Kalau Sarah tadi nggak aku telepon, dia
Gilanya
bakal pikir jam 1 coba.
Ya Allah, maaf banget. Ya ampun, PPI gak terlihat. Ya Allah.
Aku tuh
Ya,
sampai
Mas.
mikir kok dia belum muncul begitu. Padahal
Gila, Pak. I don't know. It was kayak apa. Kemarin
tapi
I don't have any excuse for that sih. Tapi kayak
lupa kali ya Mbak
maksudku,
ya.
I mean, apa ya, Mas? Kayak aku kayak kemarin tuh, I don't know, kayak HP aku sempat nggak working gitu dari kayak layar sini ke atasnya gitu kan. And then like ya udah harus